Good afternoon, beloved community. My name is Paku Heng, and I work for Vote Run Lead. And in the next hour, I'm going to be interviewing someone who I love deeply and someone who has been a mentor of mine for a long time. Her name is LaDonna Redmond. And so we're just going to wait and have LaDonna join us, and then we're going to dive into our conversation. And just like on this hour, for every hour until 5:30, Vote Run Lead is going to be interviewing a community activist or an elected official who can tell us the real story of what's going on in Minneapolis and what's happening on the ground. So I'm just waiting right now for LaDonna Redmond. But I am talking to you live from Minneapolis, which is the city of many waters. It was here 7 days ago that George Floyd was killed by the hand of law enforcement. And since that time, there have been numerous protests, uprising to not only remember him, but as a reaction to everything that's happening. And LaDonna has offered a unique take on what she sees around her and how she's choosing to react to it. And so I think her perspective is going to be really insightful for many of us, especially for many of us who may not be able to be down into the protests or be down at the rallies. She's offering a different perspective. And so I'm just trying to see. I don't think LaDonna has joined us yet. I'm going to check in with my colleagues to see if everything is okay. As we wait for LaDonna, I just want to share with you that I live about 10 blocks from where Mr. Floyd was killed, and I also live about 10 blocks from the 3rd Precinct, which is the police station that services this area of South Minneapolis. And in the first couple of days after Mr. Floyd was killed, I would wake up to this just pungent smell of burning rubber. And during the daytime, it would be eerily quiet in our street. And I feel like so many of us have been traumatized by what's happened. And I think about so many of my brothers and sisters in the Black community who are being re-victimized with yet again another senseless killing of a Black man or Black woman at the hands of police officers. And I just can't imagine the pain that they're going through and the collective pain that the community is going through. And that's why I think LaDonna is so wonderful to speak to in the next hour, because she's going to offer us a different perspective, a different way of thinking about what's happening. And so I'm really hoping that she'll be able to join us. I know that earlier this morning we were having some difficulties, some technical difficulties. So I'm hoping that she's able to join us. I'm just looking at my colleagues to see if they've heard anything from LaDonna, so that we can be able to be in conversation with her. In this morning, we also spoke to Lily Mullah, who has been a longtime advisor of Vote Run Lead, and she was telling us that she decided to join the protest at the 3rd Precinct. She only lives a couple blocks from there. She decided to go and join the protest because she really wanted to bear witness to what the youth were doing and feeling. And she kept using this language of bearing witness, which I thought was so powerful, because there is that old adage that if you don't tell your own story, someone else is going to tell it for you. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do these Instagram live shows was because we were concerned that the real stories that were happening were not being told. And so, LaDonna, I see that you joined us. You're gonna have to request to join, and so that I can add you to the show. So, LaDonna, if you can just request to join me, and then I can add you to the show. We can bring you online. So I see that LaDonna has joined us. my Vote Run League colleagues, maybe you guys can help LaDonna with some instructions. We'll need her to request to go on live with me, and then I can grant her permission to join me. So let me request. She's unable to join, it says here. Yeah, for some reason, LaDonna's icon, it's grayed out, so she's not able to join. I'm not able to ask her. LaDonna is asking, where is the request? So LaDonna, I think if you go down to where the many faces are and you click on that, that will allow you to join. LaDonna, why don't you exit and then join again? And if you scroll up to the top, there's an option to request to join. I'm sorry for that technical difficulties, you all. I've known LaDonna now for almost 10 years. She and I both used to work in the food justice world. She's still working in that world. And when LaDonna and I would talk about food justice in terms of both livelihood for Black and brown people, as well as food being medicine and as a form of taking care of each other, we were always in sync. And I always feel like she's my, other sister from another mother. And I know that she has a lot to say about trauma and community and how we can get through our trauma, not to dismiss it, but to lean into it. So I really want to thank her. And so as I was saying before, not only are we going to be talking to LaDonna at this hour, but we're also going to be talking to another wonderful sister of mine, Terri Thao. Terri has been a great community activist in St. Paul and really throughout the state around issues of transportation and economic development. And so after we're done talking to LaDonna, we're going to be talking to Terri Thao. And we're trying to get LaDonna on Instagram Live. It's taking a little bit. But if you get a chance, feel free to look at our posts this morning. We were able to interview both Luli Mola as well as Thao Mei Shong. Thao Mei is the Director of Intergovernmental Relations for the City of St. Paul, and she was sharing with us the stories that she was experiencing and seeing in the City of St. Paul, especially among Asian American business leaders and their properties, and how they were rising through the occasion. While we're struggling to get LaDonna onto this call, I do see that Terri is on here, and Terri, maybe what I can do is I can invite Terri Thao to join us. Hi, Terri.
Jeez, was I too soon?
No, this is perfect. I know that we're struggling with LaDonna, and so as we're troubleshooting that,
Okay.
maybe you and I can start talking if that's possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Terri Thao. Terri Thao has been a long time community activist. She's also my Doppler, my twin. A lot of times we get mistaken for each other.
Yes.
But Terri, I wanted to talk to you this afternoon because I know that what's happening in Minneapolis, what's been happening for the past couple of days, has been spilling over to St. Paul. And you have been such an activist and someone who's had really deep relationships with community members, especially business owners on the east side. So the east side of St. Paul, ladies and gentlemen, is a neighborhood that's a majority neighborhood in the city of St. Paul. There are a lot of Asian Americans, Hmong people, African Americans, Latinos, and it's an area where Terri has spent really the past 15, 20 years of her life. And so, Terri, I'm wondering if you could just share with us, what are you seeing and what are you hearing from community folks?
Thanks, Paku, for having me on. We're hearing a lot of different things from community folks. I think obviously no one, well, maybe people had an idea of what was going to be happening Thursday nights in terms of the vandalism for the businesses. you know, and kind of and so the folks with malintent things that got out of hand. And so what we've been seeing is a great community-led response to what's been happening, right? And so folks were on the ground. I was out literally buying plywood on Friday to help board up additional businesses. As well as for the past 2 days, we've been involved in doing a real community-based food distribution. And so this is just, you know, volunteer driven. It is being funded with donations from community members, and so as well as a couple institutional partners, but and really just organized by community members. So what we're hearing is that folks need access to food, supplies. Folks, you know, businesses who are already suffering because of the COVID crisis are especially BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, need as many resources. We were, you know, there was still an issue with them getting access to loans and funds prior to the vandalism that happened this past week. So lots of different things going on in the community. And then of course folks are out at marches every day, you know, in solidarity with the community. And so yeah, so lots of things going on.
And Terri, the reason why folks are needing food on top of the pandemic and the constraints of the pandemic is it because many of the grocery stores in that main business corridor in St. Paul was burned?
They were burned, but not only that, but they are also closed down. You know, I heard from some of the major businesses along University Avenue in St. Paul that that a lot of them had suffered severe damage and that they weren't allowed because of insurance. They had to wait to get they couldn't really clean up, and they could do a little bit of cleanup, but inventory, because you know insurance needs to know what's going to be covered. I've also been hearing too that we're not sure if quote right damage is covered under, so we're really concerned about how businesses are going to be um, you know, impacted, right? Many of whom already, you know, again, suffering, not making money because of COVID. If for a grocery store, they were okay, you know, but most other kind of anyone who was doing services, they were severely impacted.
So these businesses may have had liability insurance, but the liability insurance may not have included riots. So even though they had insurance, it may not cover these particular events. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I heard. I heard somebody, and again, this is I've heard it from a few places, one from an actual insurance person too. And so you know, that's going to be the need for technical assistance in many different languages. You know, prior to this, I was on a call Thursday with a lot of Vietnamese nail salon owners with the Coalition of Asian American Leaders, and they were really concerned too because you know they've had made no money, and then they've had to invest money in obviously, you know, like you know, PPE, getting, you know, because especially nail technicians, because they're very, you know, up and close and personal. So so they're already, you know, outlining for expenses that they did not anticipate on top of making no money.
Right. So Terri, I've heard like on Lake Street, which is another one of these minority business corridors, that they started a Lake Street facade fund to where business owners could tap into to get some relief or some support to fix up their places. Is that is something like that similarly happened in St. Paul?
Yeah, there's actually a GoFundMe that the Asian Economic Development Association, for full disclosure, I was their board chair and board member for many years, that they just launched a GoFundMe to that where 100% of the funds will go to the businesses that were impacted. There is a fund now that's helping East Side of St. Paul businesses. It was COVID relief, but I thought I turned off the do not disturb, turned on the do not disturb. It's COVID relief, but then they are now pledging to get a lot of those funds out to BIPOC businesses, and so it just comes on the heels of the gradual reopening here in Minnesota too. So there is I can get folks connections I'm seeing in the chat here to resources to help. There's lots of funds. There's one in University Avenue of the businesses that were impacted that's different from the Asian Economic Development one in the Midway area, which suffered you know, a couple buildings were destroyed there. They have a fund there. I think 150,000 has been raised there. Lake Street Council has a fund.
Right.
That's mm-hmm.
So just to clarify for those folks who may not be familiar with the geography in St. Paul, so when Terri is alluding to University Avenue, that is a long strip of street that has a lot of minority, mostly Asian American businesses, and it's also in the Frogtown and the Midway neighborhoods, which are neighborhoods that are that are majority minority residents. And then there's another neighborhood in St. Paul that's called the
Yeah.
East Side that's also majority minority residents. Terri, you're a policy wonk. You like live die policy, and I'm wondering what are some of the policies that we should be advocating for that get to the root of you know the harm of the police department to Black and brown communities, but also to this economic revitalization and reinvestment. What are the policies or what are things that we should be advocating for?
Yeah. So first of all, if people who know me know my work in economic development. People have a good job, a good high quality job that are paying people decent wages and that can cover families, things, less incidences of crime, right? So we all know that statistically. I think the policy front, we're going to have to work at both, a local, regional, and state level to do things like really have policies that are directed towards BIPOC communities, right? We need, as a matter of fact, more investments. And at the legislature, getting them to even put aside COVID relief for small BIPOC run shopping malls that a lot of Somali and Hmong community members, the Latinx community members use was really hard. They could not get it through this recent session. So we need very dedicated funds that will disaggregate by race and racial ethnic subgroup. And from a policy front, we also need, city dollars allocated those ways, and so and state funding, and which has for sometimes has gone through. So to get to the long-term impacts, because I think this is also when we are able to fund thriving districts, we don't have to fund other districts.
Exactly. I've also been reading on Facebook and in other online things like really holding our police contracts accountable. So those are places where we really can, forge better relationships by surrounding or dictating how the police contracts are manifested. Also divesting out of for-profit prisons, or advocating for more comprehensive housing reform or more comprehensive education reform. And like what you were saying, that the root cause of this, it was spurred again by the death of George Floyd, but George Floyd did not die in an isolated incident. That it's the compounding of all of these systematic problems that have produced the events of the last week. So I really hear you on that. Terri, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about just the relationship or the coalition building that's happening in St. Paul around both the African American, the Hmong, the Vietnamese, the Latino businesses, or just in community members in general. There was a kind of a narrative that, oh, now Hmong people are against Black people or Black people against Hmong people, but that's just not, from what I've seen, that's not true. And I'm wondering if that's what you're seeing too.
It's both, right? At the same time, we see solidarity being built, and a lot of times too, and Becco knows this too. Someone who grew up in St. Paul, we call it St. Small. A lot of us have, those of us who've grown up here, those active in community organizing, community work, tend to know each other. And so, like this coalition that's responding to food, like in the past 2 days, we gave out food to almost 300 folks, right?
Wow.
And so at one site alone, right? And we also were delivering to families, and that came out of just relationships. I knew people, I have their cell phone numbers. I'm doing this. And then we all got coordinated. So the relationships that folks should have been developing all along is what's made things stronger. So I think and a lot of times there, we've built solidarity there. But at the same time, the vandalism has brought out a huge amount of anti-Blackness, particularly in the Hmong community, right? Vitriol towards particularly women leaders who are to build solidarity, and it is very, very disheartening to see. It's disheartening because it's coming from our young people. We're trying to get a sense of where the rage is coming from, right? And so, and I think the rage it's a generational thing. It's the systems, the misogyny, patriarchy at play. But we're starting at the same time. We see a great solidarity. I was at the march the other day of Hmong folks for Black Lives. But there still is a lot of online, Blackness that's still being, unfortunately spread.
I'm reminded that patriarchy is embedded with white supremacy, right? And white supremacy prevails when they can get Black and brown people to fight against each other for crumbs.
Yes.
So, and I also feel like we're not thinking critically, or that these questions are hard, these discussions are hard. And so we're not thinking critically or in the nuances about like, why does Black Lives Matter? And why does that umbrella also include then you and me and like the shoulders that we stand on?
Yeah.
But what is giving you hope right now? What are you seeing that is telling you that we're going to get through this?
It's the relationships, the solidarity, the organizers on the ground who are doing work. And I want to let you know, I mean, it's been women of color that's been leading the work that's been here on the ground in St. Paul, right? And so, and it's not, I'm here, but let me tell you, there's a whole other folks who've been super supportive. I appreciate like my employer saying, let's kick in money, right? Just moving really quickly. And I think, and that's what's going to be done. I think, we have to remember, what's also going to hope is we have to continue to message it's a long term. It's not just food support now, but a month from now, because we're still in the pandemic. Most of the people unemployed were folks making, in the service sector, which is a lot of people in my neighborhood, right? And so we still have to continue to push for greater policies for folks who are, for folks who have no money and very little money, right? Working class folks. And so what that gives me hope. I have kids, right? I want to build a better world for them. So very selfishly, and children who are, going to be out there. I was really happy to bring my daughter to the march the other day, and she loves being at the food shelf with me distributing, and we are and the kids there that are helping, it's amazing, right? And so we're gonna have to figure out a lot of this ourselves. And I think, continue to make
Great.
work I've always done, those most impacted, right? Those who my bosses weather the storm get to experience the calm, but we get to form what that looks like too.
Well, thank you so much, Terri. I know that you're very busy, and I so respect that you were able to come on and share with us your perspective and what you're seeing and hearing. So thank you so much, and peace to you, sister.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And if anyone's curious, I'm in my daughter's room. Those are her BTS dolls, so please don't be out by that. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm going to try now to tap into LaDonna. And LaDonna, if you are on, unfortunately, I still don't see LaDonna on here. So if one of my colleagues can just see if LaDonna can join us, I do want to hear what she has to say about what's going on these past couple of days. So that was Terri Thao, who is a community activist in the city of St. Paul. City of St. Paul is part of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, and they have been also experiencing a lot of the calamity that we've been experiencing in Minneapolis. Their mayor is Melvin Carter, who obviously has a unique perspective of what's going on being a Black male. He's a good friend of mine, a longtime friend, and I know that he has been trying to really be transparent with the community folks about how they're making decisions. But I'd love to get LaDonna on, because LaDonna is so wise, and she's a woman that's had a lot of experiences, and I'm really eager to hear what she has to say about how she's getting through this. So if we can get LaDonna back on, I'm going to try one more time to see if LaDonna is on here. I still don't see LaDonna. I'm sorry. So after LaDonna at 2 o'clock, we'll be talking to a lot more other amazing civic leaders. We're going to be talking later on to, go down for a second. We're going to be talking later on to Alondra Cano, who's a city member, the city council member for Ward 9, which is the ward or the geography or the area where a lot of the 3rd precinct is, and where a lot of the vandalism has occurred. And so Alondra is going to have a really unique perspective for us. After Alondra, we're also going to be talking to Patricia Torres-Ray, who is a state senator from this area, as well as to Wintana, when Tana has been leading a lot of the kind of first aid essential services response to some of the protesters. And so she's going to have a unique perspective. And then later in the afternoon, we're also going to be hearing from Andrea Jenkins, who is a city council member, and Ilhan Omar, who is a congresswoman from this area. So I've been told that LaDonna is going to be trying to join us, but that it might not be for a little bit. So let me see here if LaDonna is on. She's not on here yet. Okay. So when we have LaDonna available, we will jump back into Instagram Live. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for joining us and being in conversation with us. Thank you.